now, all of you must be aware that I have a workshop called Fundamental Space. To be able to understand the impact of space upon our lives, we need to get into the whole mess of what is space, where does it come from, where is it going, and where do we fit into the whole thing. Now, to take this matter a little ahead, I have decided to platform issues, invite panelists, and have a little debate between them. This is our inaugural program. This is the first episode. I really don't know if it's going to be a weekly or a bi-weekly. I'm still checking it out. But we put this together. The platform issue on number one is civic sense. Is civic sense sensible? Is it available? Is it practiced? Is it accountable? So on, so on, so on, so forth. To present the subject, we have with us a media personality and a school teacher. If you wish to comment upon this, you can do so at the email ID that I'm going to be posting on the show. Have a look. Thank you very much, Trivikrama and Vasanthi, for joining us on this inaugural program of Fundamental Space. And we have in front of us a very important issue on civic sense. And I'm very happy to have both of you here. And I really hope that we can make some sense of civic sense. And before we go any further, what is civic sense? Vasanthi, what is civic sense?
Oh, I wish it were as simple as that. So most of us are born with, 5 senses. Some people like you have a 6th sense. That's why you've created Fundamental Space. But then the civic sense seems to be so, it's so easy to articulate it. But I did a dipstick with some children in my environment, in my neighborhood, when you invited me to this program. And I asked them what is civic sense, and then I asked them, do they have civic sense in school? So most of them were aware of the concept of civic sense, that they had a subject in school from the 5th or 6th grade. But when they were talking about politics, governance, structures, constitution, Rajya Sabha, local, all that. But then when you ask them to interpret it in day-to-day relevance, very few, I think 1 out of 10, could really put it in words. So that was a little bit of a shock, which tells us how uncommon civic sense is. So that's a question that we need to step back and ask ourselves. But we don't have to really think too hard about what is civic sense. When an ambulance is passing on the road, how close do we go to that ambulance just so that we get a free passageway? At some point, I think all of us are guilty of doing that. That is civic sense. By not doing that is civic sense. How many of us return the trolley to the supermarket after we finish our work? We just leave it at the check-in counter. Returning it to the designated place is civic sense. When I came back from Dubai after I was living in Dubai in the Middle East for 35 years. When I came back from Dubai, one of the first things that hit me in Bangalore was every morning when I go for my walks, I would see people very proudly taking the dogs for a walk. Right, that's very good. You're owners of dogs. But then I would see all colors of poops on the road to welcome me in the morning. If I were living overseas, if these same people were living overseas, they would wear gloves and they would pick up the poop and throw it in the designated dustbin. Why can't the same people do that here in India? That was something which really hit me off the park. That is civic sense. Doing that is civic sense. Picking up the poop after you. So that I can give you enough and more examples of what is civic sense and how we are not practicing civic sense.
Thank you very much, Vasanthi. Trivikrama, what is civic sense to you?
Well, to me, civic sense is something very individual, first of all. If we look at our inner space, what we are within us, and we outside. So if you have that balance by which you can make your outer space better, by doing what comes to you from within, then you're practicing civic sense. I don't think civic sense is something which is a herd mentality. In many ways, it is what comes to you from within. So do you want to be a good person and pick up the poop, as you say? Do you want to be the one to move out of the way so that the ambulance can go where it is really needed? I mean, these are things you have to find answers to yourself. So to me, civic sense is a sense of responsibility to your outer space coming from within your inner space.
Excellent, excellent, lovely, Trivikrama. Very well said, Vasanti and Trivikrama. Well, the book says that civic sense is addressing societal needs in an informed manner. This is what the book says, basically. And you're right there, Trivikrama, it is personal. Vasanti, you're right there. It is not practiced personally here. It is practiced everywhere else but in India, and so on and so forth. So let's just go into the nitty-gritty of this. I'm going to ask a question right now to Vasanti. Traditionally, Vasanti, who imparts civic sense? In a family, who imparts civic sense?
The answer that is in your question itself, Aditya. You said the family. You know, I think that children can speak, but who teaches them the words to speak? Who teaches them the language, the vocabulary? It's we. It all starts from us, you know, before they go to school. So before we palm off the responsibility to institution where they can be sent to and to be taught, I think it's the onus lies with us, the family, the parents. We need to inculcate these values in our children, starting small, as young as babies, like, you know, Montessori school of thought, because I've trained in that way of teaching. So it's children are in the formative years, have their absorbent mind, and we have to lead by example, and they inculcate those values once we practice them. When we go and take out the garbage and keep it in front of a house and look around to see is anybody else watching, the child is watching us. Forget the neighbor watching you. So, you know, we have to lead by example, and I think it starts from the family.
Excellent, Vasanti. Trivikrama, moving beyond the family, once you leave the family, from the sociological point of view, you have family, you have education, and you have a social life. So, moment you move from the family circle and move into the education circle, which is where you belong, really. Tell me, do schools, colleges, institutions, academic people, do they practice or do they have a subject called civic sense, which is practiced not just by I would say, the ICSE, CBSE schools, but pan-India?
Okay, so as it was mentioned earlier, there is a subject, an academic subject in most school curriculum, which is called civics. Now, that civics is basically a textual version of what your constitutional writers of constitution and your founding fathers envisioned for the country. So it's a whole set of rules, laws, what the constitution says, rights, responsibilities, all of that. Now, that's a very good starting point to give the child information. It's information that this is what has been envisioned for you and your nation. But unfortunately, down the years, our children have somehow lost many children have lost some of that innocence, that idealism, because what they see in the world around them, thanks to exposure through media and various other ways, they see that the very rules that they are learning in school are being broken outside by so-called responsible members of society, your leaders, your social leaders, your influencers, your whatever level. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties, but at various levels, the very same rules that are being taught in school from a book are not being carried out, and they are being broken with impunity by many people. So the children now, in many cases, have come to the conclusion that this is just good for marks. It really doesn't count in the outer world. And this sometimes, sadly, is reinforced by the behavior they see at home, as Vasanti very correctly said. The home atmosphere is not one of leading by example. Now, having said that, that is just the information in the textual part. There are still, by the grace of God, very many responsible schools in India. And every school has a mission statement, core values, all of that. So within that, they try to build a set of values that children should follow. Now, I can only give the example of the school that I was working. Shriram School has a mission statement which talks about bringing children up in a safe and secure environment to become globally responsible citizens. It talks of sensitivity. It talks of integrity. Now, it's all very well to have it up there in the wall and children read it, but everything has to reflect that. So many schools try to have your assemblies, your activities, your lesson plans centered around these values so children can see that these values have been put into action in the past, and then again the school staff, faculty are sometimes very particular about putting them into action. And here I want to make a point about the safe and secure environment. When I'm talking of safe and secure environment for children to learn and absorb, it's physical safety, yes, but it is also emotional safety. If a child feels safe, that the child is not going to be labeled, is not going to be talked down to, is not his self-esteem or her self-esteem is not going to take a knocking because that child is different, then the child will learn and imbibe much better. So this is what many schools are trying to do outside the prescribed curriculum. And as long as they are doing it, we have hope.
Excellent. Very well said, Trivikrama. Tell me, Trivikrama, the child learns in school that this is the right way. When he comes out of school, he realizes that only he knows this is the right way. This is what you're saying in the first part of what you just said. So tell me,
Yes,
what is the
yes.
societal impact when he comes out of school? What is the societal impact?
I think at the first level, there is such a great dissonance that the child is left bewildered. And at that time, the child needs the guidance the most, at that transition stage, whether it is from an educational institution at a higher level or from the family. Now, depending on that situation, there may be a situation where, thanks to sobering influences, responsible influences, the child finds the balance between the harsh reality and practical living and a completely idealistic way of life, which is the reality of the way we are living in the world. But there may be cases when that doesn't happen. And that's when you have the sad case of children who start out very well, but developing into self-absorbed human beings, probably with double standards validated. So they will expect certain respect, but they will not be able to give that to anybody else. I mean, you have a child who's asking for space. Give me my space. Don't bother me. But will that child respect the other person's space and dignity? That kind of guidance is very, very important. Of course, it will then multiply into a social level, maybe a national level. You never know. Because I think there was a Chinese philosopher, Confucius, who spoke about an inferior man, who said the inferior man is not ashamed of unkindness. And if we are not particular about civic sense and the correct guidance, this is what our young citizens can turn into. This will be the societal and the national impact. We'll have a lot of inferior men hanging around.
Brilliant. Very well said, Vasanti. What do the knowledge that, one is the knowledge that Trivikrama represents, that is the current academic knowledge. What do the scriptures say about this? Cleanliness is next to godliness. Tell me, whatever your knowledge is, whatever you've been taught, whatever you know, whatever you've read and heard, any scripture without naming it.
Civic sense into
Sorry?
Stories and religion, it has been brought down through ages. It has been historically taught down the ages. Civic virtues, like all our holy books, whole Quran, Ramayana, Bible, they've all been a major source of inculcating moral values and spreading the message of kindness, compassion, generosity, non-violence, self-sacrifice, charity, what have you. All these scriptures, they exemplify do's and don'ts of life. Even today, we can, moral lessons from them are being adopted by a lot of people for, day-to-day living. If you take Buddhism, for example, qualities of compassion and empathy, they're exactly the kind of values that global citizenship seeks to harness. In Hinduism, you have the niyama and the aniyama. You have the do's and yamas and the niyamas. You have the do's and the don'ts, which has been embedded in the Vedas, which are 6,000 to 8,000 years old. So all these they're all fundamental to beings, and they have been brought down the ages. And perhaps somewhere down the way, it's been lost in transition. That's all I can say. So the scriptures have been doing their bit. I think whether it's Quran, whether it's Bible, whether it's Hinduism, they have all been advocating these civic virtues, and they have not gone wrong.
Thank you. You are referring to the Ashtanga Yoga, which is very, very interesting. They have 8 points, and Buddhism have their own pillars, and Jainism have their own pillars, basically. And all of these three major religions, including the Quran and the Bible, have their own tenets of civic sense.
If I may add, Indians need not read any religious scriptures or sermons to live peacefully. The Constitution itself has incorporated all these virtues to live peacefully in society without hatred and violence. Our constitution is a scripture in itself. So we don't have to look as far as 6,000 and 8,000 years old.
Very nice. Our constitution is the scripture by itself. We'll come to that in a second. Trivikrama, is in the Western countries, is civic sense a formal subject across the board?
I wouldn't say across the board, and I don't have the knowledge or the expertise to comment on that internationally. I do compare notes on and off and informally with friends and people who are abroad. I have a friend, a very good old school friend. We've known each other since class 2, so we are quite a bit in touch. She is a teacher in a place called Brookline, Massachusetts, I think, which she tells me very clearly is a very small place, may not be representative of the entire USA. But there's children are taught these things through community service, through helping out in the classroom from a very young age. And she says that it results in adults who follow laws, who don't. And so there are teachers out there in the world who are following these principles and trying to pass them on. So there are places that are doing it formally, informally, but I'm not sure. I think the general feeling I got is that most of it comes from the home. And I've been to a couple of places like Germany, for instance, and I was very impressed that there are these things exist in real life over there, which we don't see back home. And as Vasanthi said, the very same people over there who will follow the rules, whether it's a Singapore or a Germany, will come and mess up over here. So that is there. But I get the impression, I may be wrong, but I get the impression that by and large it boils down to the family and what the family teaches. School may just be reinforcing it in some places.
Excellent. Vasanthi, you were talking about the Constitution. So, do we have a citizens' charter?
We do actually. The Government of India, in the Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, it does have a citizen charter, which is a document that represents a systematic effort to focus on the commitment of any organization towards its citizens with regards to standard of services, information, choice and consultation, non-discrimination, accessibility, grievance redressal, courtesy, value for money. So all this has been clearly delineated in the Citizens Charter, which can be actually found online on goicharters.nic.in. And this is, it's not a legal right. It does not by itself create a legal right. It doesn't hold anybody accountable, but it surely helps in enforcing to a ministry, it can be relevant to a department, it can be relevant to an organization. What it tells each of these bodies is what you can do to inculcate this sort of accountability amongst the people that you work with or you engage with in your community, whether it's an organizational level, national level, community level, society level.
There are two parts to a citizen's charter, and this is mostly in all countries, which is the rights and the responsibilities. I think even Trivikrama said that. The rights is the rights of the citizen, and the responsibility is the responsibility to the Constitution. So one is what you get and one is what you should be giving. As far as the responsibilities are concerned, it basically, everybody talks of the rights. This is my fundamental right, speech and this and that and all that. Responsibilities is something else. It means I will not create civic unrest. I will not create a nuisance. I'm putting it very simply, but there are a lot of responsibilities mentioned therein. Are those being followed? Vasanthi.
Okay. Yeah, it is at a very fundamental level, the intention is there. You know, the intention to follow is there. Listen, India is a young country with about 28% of its population in the 0 to 14 age group. To ensure that this population proves to be a future demographic dividend, the institutions are trying to, they have the intention to inculcate. I know many schools, like Trivikrama said, among the sample study that I did for your talk at Dipstick, a lot of these schools, they do have these environmental lessons, assembly time where they are trying to inculcate a certain, civic quality into the. So the intention is there. How much of it is followed through is the question.
I have a question for both of you now. Assembly time, marching in order, keeping your books neatly on the table. When I was in boarding, I had to wish every teacher, stand to attention and wish the teacher if the teacher crossed me, and I still do it if I go back to my school. And so on and so forth is one way of doing it. The question here is it a formal subject? Geography is a formal subject. History is a formal subject. You got to sit down, spend 40 minutes, make notes. There are homeworks. You got to get through tuitions, preparation, exams, preliminaries, final exams. It gives you credits in college, and you can do your master's in it, so on and so forth. That's a formal subject. So is there a formal subject, yes or no? So there is, as Trivikrama said, that there is at some level. I'm aware that it is not there on all levels. Even I've done a little bit of research, and the bulk of the state level schools may not have it and in such a detailed manner as the CBSE, ICSE schools may be having. I'm presuming this. If both of you were teachers, one of you is and one of you is a media lady, but if both of you were teachers, or both of you are parents, or both of you on the same side of the career, skill and thinking, what are the 5, 6 or 7 such points that you would turn into a curriculum for a formal subject? It's a formal subject. You got to pass. And a foundational basically means primary or maximum in the early part of secondary, not beyond that. If you don't cross it, you don't get ahead. That is important. Teaching it as the last, I had moral science in school. It was the last subject. On a Friday evening, Friday late afternoon, it was the last subject. So Friday after lunch, we all went to sleep. Because next day was Saturday and Saturday is a holiday. So Friday after lunch meant that, okay, now you can chill out, like, things like that. So how do you take it like mathematics? You don't pass in maths in your primary, you don't get ahead. Read, write, something like that. Tell me, both of you.
Trivikrama, you can.
Okay. So, I personally, again, thanks to where I was teaching, I believe in the interdisciplinary approach of teaching. So if I were to design a curriculum, I don't know what I would call that subject, but yes, we would have something, we could call it civicity, if the word gets recognized. But you have a subject which begins with any form, which would include any form of what I would call edifying reading. I'm not talking only of religion and scriptures, because it could be more than that. So we start with, and as Vasanti very correctly said, all the religions, all the faiths in the world come to the same principles which govern a correct conduct of living. So use those, use philosophy, use a poem like Desiderata. I mean, anything. Use any form of edifying reading. So you have children learning, reading this, getting reading skills in the process, because reading skills are lacking. You don't have illiteracy, you have illiteracy. So reading skills are lacking. So I would have that subject involving reading. I would also have interdisciplinary approach to that subject. One aspect of every subject, or almost all subjects, such as a history or a literature or something, would take a case study, and there would be skills, but at the same time, my subject is also imparting the knowledge, the idea of through discussion of right and wrong, and all this to make it compulsory would be marked or assessed. So if the child does not score a certain level, like maths or physics or science, then you're not getting ahead. So I'm talking about giving a body of information and knowledge. I'm talking about discussions. I'm talking about reading, writing skills, but in an interdisciplinary fashion. So it is linked with other subjects. And I can only add something that I believe in personally. And again, I go back to ancient China. Mencius, another philosopher, has said that the beginning of wisdom is knowing the difference between right and wrong. This is what my curriculum would try to impart in an interdisciplinary fashion.
Excellent, thank you. Vasanti, what do you feel?
Very well said. I agree with whatever she said. I don't know. I don't know if I can add anything to that, because it's given a very comprehensive response. So for me, if civic sense is to be defined as to include social norms, behavior, codes, ethics, then I think under the concept of civicity that you just mentioned, the curriculum could be divided into two parts, like civic literacy and civic practices. I think that's what is already being done, but could be done with much more awareness of what the student needs to be doing at the end as he leaves school. So civic literacy will include all the nationhood, the socio-economic aspects of citizenship, etc. And civic in class from books into practice. This is done through assembly, extracurricular activities, programs. But then I know that I'm talking from personal experience. I know that people some children in my building, their schools have been promoting this, and they say, go to your neighbors and do something. I have seen neighbors, or maybe even I have been guilty of that. I don't want to point fingers. When a child rings the doorbell and I open the door, they say, Auntie, can you help us? You say, no, I'm sorry. Can you come back later? And you shut the door. You don't really, all of us are guilty of doing that at some point. So we need to also, when the school is trying to do all of that, to encourage the child to go into the neighborhood, to practice what he's learning from textbooks into, to apply to day-to-day life. And we don't extend a helping hand as parents, as neighbors, as community leaders, as social beings. I think then the purpose is lost. So, the awareness has to come. It's not only the institution that has a responsibility in introducing this curriculum from whichever, grade, from the formative years to the older ones. But I think we have to be holding the hands at every stage to ensure that this curriculum is being
Excellent. Thank you so much. One last question. How do you make this accountable? Is it a law? Is it a law to throw garbage out of a bin? Yes, it's a law. But all of the other things, like Trivikrama said, that the difference between right and wrong. But right and wrong is had a perspective now. It may be different from Vasanthi.
Sometimes you have to force it down people's throat, like Singapore does it admirably. Malaysia does it. All these countries do have this sort of penalty that is imposed if you flout a civic rule. But we don't have to look too far, Aditya. If you look at the urban Delhi Metro, for instance, let's take the instance of Delhi Metro. It's also about urban design, which enables a citizen to be respectful to the civic values. Delhi Metro system, I think, is such an example, beautiful example. Why is it so clean? Why is it when you go into the metro station, it's impeccable? It could be comparable to any international metro railway, because there is a fine attached, a cost attached to the person who litters, the place. There is reminders are being sent out or announced in the metro that people don't, do not eat on trains. Please offer your seats to those who need it more. These things are being announced. So engaging is one. And then educating is another. Okay, let's start with education, engaging, and making them take ownership of their own surroundings. That it makes there is anything which comes free is abused. I mean, that's something which we have all seen, right? So unless you start with penalizing them, it doesn't have to be too much of a penalization. That itself is enough to put me on guard that I should not be doing this. I think more and more, we do have more public toilets. We do have, messages. We do, I think organizations and the radio, the media needs to allocate some percentage of their budgets to public information dissemination. Corporates do CSR. Why don't you allocate 5% or even a little bit of that percent of CSR budget to doing something among the community where this is kind of mandatory for people to follow. I know you can lead by example. So either you do it by public dissemination of message, by penalizing them, or by the corporates taking a responsibility by engaging citizenship.
Excellent, Vasanthi. Trivikrama, please conclude as a teacher and say something about civicity and its desire to be implemented in India?
So if you're talking, I would say in the same vein as Vasanti said, and when I said refer to Confucius earlier, I gave only half of what he says. So to complete what he says, that same inferior man will not improve if he is not intimidated. But if you know how to intimidate him, he will, and he's made to be careful in little things, then he will automatically be careful in the larger things. So I agree 100% with what Vasanti said, that you have to have a danda on somebody's head. But being a teacher, I also know that the carrot also works. So there has to be something by which there is the stick, but also an acknowledgement of good civic sense, so that I feel proud that I have used my inner space to look after my outer space. That's all.
Excellent, Vasanti, excellent, Trivikrama. And on the note of carrot and stick, I think I should be wary of continuing more and come back and tell you that both of you have really put something very valuable on the show. And I hope people can hear it, take note of it. As Vasanti said, get engaged. And as Trivikrama said, that maybe get intimidated a little bit to be embarrassed and say, okay, I should get engaged. And we become better human beings. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, ladies. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Vasanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Trivik.
Wow. This is unbelievable. I'm so grateful to both of these ladies for bringing this entire subject in some kind of a focus, some kind of a comprehensive material that people can have a look at. What are the catchphrases that I understood from this? Educate, engage. Parental education is very important. I understood that. And how do you bring what is inside you outside of you? If you have some compassion inside, it must be expressed as well. So the concept of inside space and outside space that Trivikrama mentioned is excellent. Have a look, guys. Have a look if you can do something about this and take it forward. Have a nice day. Thank you.